The Texas Longhorns, 5-3, 7-3 after an awesome bowl performance. Casey Thompson, Bijan Robinson, and see you later, Tom Herman. Thanks for the bowl win, but you can pack your things now and your new coordinators too, because Steve Sarkisian is loading up a caravan. They're leaving Tuscaloosa and they're coming down to Austin. Sark arrives with a star-studded coaching staff, many from the Crimson Tide. Also, he went out to go get Pete Kwiatkowski in as the defensive coordinator. And so, we put in some of the same expectations and questions that we do for a lot of these first-year coaches, especially ones who inherit rosters as talented as Texas is. What's it going to look like? What do we know? Like what can we get from spring practice, from your spring notes and tidbits and everything we're getting from the boots on the ground? What can we do to create an expectation? Because we don't have much from last year. Quarterback battle is going to be the headliner here. Casey Thompson and Hudson Card. Thompson, as we just mentioned, with the awesome performance in the bowl game. Hudson Card, let's run back an old sound clip, because just like how CJ Stroud was number 3 quarterback in the class behind Bryce Young and DJ Uiagalelei. That's right. Am I correct? Hudson Card was the number 4, one spot behind CJ Stroud.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, if I don't know how far I can stretch that down in the quarterback rankings from that class to make you sound awesome because of your proximity to DJ Uiagalelei, but it extends to Hudson Card. Brennan Eagles and Tariq Black, the Michigan transfer, are both gone. Joshua Moore, the leading returning receiver. I think Bijan Robinson is one of the most exciting all-purpose stars in all of college football. So, I mean, those are the pieces that you've got there. What do you look like on defense? A lot of Sark year 1 questions. Texas is one of the most interesting places in the country right now for college football. So I don't know, where y'all's heads at? What's on the top of mind for spring practice?
Ellinger actually was a good QB last year.
Yeah.
Like good throwing the ball for. Honestly, I used to kind of dog him a little bit. I thought he was more of just a, Tim Tebow light, like a runner, but not really a great thrower. And last year he actually threw the ball well. So like, who wins this quarterback battle is actually going to have pretty big throwing shoes to fill, whether it's Card or Thompson. And I think Texas quarterback room is really nice here. I think Thompson and Card can both play. And so I don't think anybody's going to win the job absent injury, just by default. So I feel like that's something to look out for there. Like, they should have decent quarterback play. Sark pretty much always does. So I'm fairly confident they'll have, good QB play. I will say last year, their receivers let them down over and over again, man. I mean, and now, so Brennan Eagles is gone. Jake Smith is already out for spring with, I believe I read on Horns 24/7, with a foot fracture. I'm a little bit concerned about the receiver position here, especially with a new quarterback you're breaking in. And then defensively, is Juwan Mitchell gone again? Like, I don't know how many times he's going to jump into the transfer portal, but it seems like he's not around for spring practice right now. He was their leading tackler last year. And then I think replacing Joseph Asai is not necessarily super easy. I mean, he was kind of like just plug him in and pass rush last year. So those are kind of what I'm watching for with Texas. There's some pieces here I like. Certainly, Bijan is nasty. But there's some real questions here.
Yeah, this is a really interesting spot, and what I'm kind of excited for in 2021, because I think there's a pretty decent range of outcomes. Because I don't think Tom Herman, if you look at his results in Austin, it's like they weren't as good as Texas fans wanted, but they were trending in the right direction. Like, it's the first time I felt like there was a coach at Texas that had a positive trajectory going, even though not in comparison to the expectations, in a long time. And I think that Sark is inheriting a pretty good roster, even if a lot of the production from last year's gone. So I look at the situation, I'm like, this team could be pretty darn good in 2021. And I think Sark's a very good offensive mind. We saw what he was able to do at Alabama to help that offense and make it one of the most elite offenses in the country. So I look at the quarterback talent he has. I look at Bijan Robinson, and I think of Bijan Robinson being used more in like the same kind of ways we saw Najee Harris used with Alabama, and I think that could be really good for that Texas offense. I think that offensive line was good. It loses a couple key guys, but I still think that they've recruited and developed enough there where I'm not worried about that being a problem. I think there's plenty of talent on the defensive end. So I think that, honestly, as I break down the teams, just looking at them from what we know right now, I feel like Texas is the number 2 team in the conference. It doesn't mean I think it's going to win the conference. I think it could be a 9-3 team and still be the second best team in the Big 12 this year. So I just see a lot of talent. I see a good coach in Sark, and I see a team that was in a good spot last year. And I don't think Tom Herman was fired because of his coaching. I think he was fired because of the eyes of Texas and all that crap off the field. So I'm kind of excited about Texas. That doesn't, again, they could completely crash and go 7-5, 6-6, but I see a pretty high ceiling for them heading into the spring.
I do too. I'm more bullish on Texas, but then like when you dive deeper into it, you look at how, because I was under the impression that he's inheriting a full cupboard, right? Like a pretty good situation of young talent, which probably is the case. But then you look at the defense, which was 8th in the Big 12 with 17 sacks, 5 of which came from Joseph Asai, who's gone. Graham had 2. He's gone as well. You're like, all right, where is the pass rush going to come from? Where is a physical team up front going to come from? But maybe you don't need it in the Big 12 as much against some of these teams. Bud said something about Sam Ehlinger where I think it's going to go one of two ways. One is I think there's a faction of Texas fans, and I would put myself in this as a Sam Ehlinger. Like, this is my take on him. I think he's a really good college quarterback, but I think you maxed out his potential. I think there might be something more there at quarterback, but I also could see wildly inconsistent play with the young quarterback breaking in, whoever it is, Casey Thompson or Hudson Card. And you're like, man, we missed that steady ship that just gave us every time. We knew exactly what we're going to get. But maybe you get that next year and you get a little bit more of a playmaker. You get somebody, and like, again, Ehlinger was good. He wasn't great. If they stumble upon a great quarterback, that could be the difference where all of a sudden this team is deep in the season, contending in the Big 12. And maybe they don't beat Oklahoma the first time around, but they're positioning themselves for a rematch in the Big 12 championship game. The receiver position is an issue where, what type of talent are they going to develop? But I trust Sark as a play caller. But then I'm kind of like, well, he's got a lot on his plate now as the head coach. Like, how much time is he getting to spend drawing up, the same type of plays that he was doing in Alabama? And he doesn't have the same level of talent up front. We're all excited about Bijan Robinson. How does he utilize him? But I am more bullish on Texas. I think I fall in line with Tom. Like, I think they'll challenge Oklahoma. I don't think they'll beat them, but this would be the one in the bet of the field where I'd kind of be like, oh, maybe Texas. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if they're, I don't know if I would say around 500, but I think a 7-5 opening season, 8-4 would be clearly a letdown with the excitement that they're right now. And yet I wouldn't be totally shocked. Like, if there's inconsistent play at quarterback and the secondary is getting worked over and just giving up 400 or 500 yards passing game, I wouldn't be shocked either.
Yeah.
I will say, Alfred Collins is the name to watch defensive line. Like, total freak, was a Baylor commit for a long time. Texas flipped him late. He's a dude who, if it all clicks, he has, like, no doubt first round athleticism size combo. So that's the guy they're going to be counting on, or one of them at least, to replace some of those size production.
Yeah, and to go along with, like, the pass rush concerns for them going into the year, because sometimes sacks can be misleading. Like, sometimes you get a lot of pressure on QBs, but you don't finish the sack, and you just look at sacks and say, wow, this team couldn't get any pressure. But if you just look from PFF's pass rush rate, which is just the percentage of plays the defense controls the line of scrimmage, Texas had a 52.7%, which ranks 6th in the Big 12 and was below the national average of 54. So it's not just a case where they weren't getting home. They weren't really getting pressure either, and that is something that they do need to improve.
The last thing I'll say on Texas, I thought last year that their defense did not look well coordinated, and that is probably not a reflection on the coaching as much as it is on trying to install a new scheme during COVID times, right? And then like not working together well in the Big 12, where even though the QB play was down last year in the Big 12, most teams at least attempt to chuck it around. They gave up far too many, just kind of dumb completions, stuff that was like, oh, they got 6 yards on 3rd and 5 again. And it just, that had to be frustrating as a Texas fan last year.
And, not to stray too far away from our numbers and from our hard science and evidence, but I do think that there's a intangible for Steve Sarkisian and this new staff. I mean, that was a tough year for Texas to go through all that, have the changeover on the coaching staff, have the kind of season you had. Tom Herman gets fired. Like, there's a decent amount of like, hey, if you can win the locker room over, then yeah, your ceiling is going right there head to head with Oklahoma. But I think that I'm not expecting a crash and burn scenario, but I would say that it is as important as play calling, or at least drawing up a scheme for this spring, is just making that connection with the locker room. Get them on your side. It's important for Sark and all of those coaches.